All right, guys, we'll get this show on the road. What do you think we might be talking about today? I wonder. Maybe the same thing we've been talking about for the past few weeks. Um, hey, Duba, am I spotlighted? I'd change it up a little bit this week. Like, can you see my picture bigger on this versus like the big checkerboard with like everybody on the camera?
Yeah, it's
Good. Okay.
yes, you're good.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right, guys. Really, we're talking about the same thing we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, which is Iran and oil and the war and what's happening with that. Um, I've got a product tip for you guys as well, and I also have a sales tip to share at the end. I'm going to dive right into the charts though, because what's happening right now is interesting, and we've been talking for the past few weeks that there was a concern that as oil prices moved higher, when is that going to creep in, and when are we going to start seeing inflation as a result of that? And we actually started seeing that on Friday of last week, really a little bit Thursday, but Friday. So there's two big inflation reports released every month. There's the CPI, um, and there's the PCE, so the Consumer Price Index, and the PCE is the Personal Consumption Expenditure. And CPI was released on Friday, and it came in not hotter than expectations, but much hotter than it had been the prior few months. The PCE report that was released for the month of February, so that was kind of pre-war. So the market really shrugged that off. That was on Thursday. Typically, that's a big market mover. But what we got on Friday, the CPI, was the CPI for the month of March, which is reflective of higher oil prices. Um, and so you can see that the CPI for March, inflation rose at 0.9% for the month. A typical month that we've seen for the past few years as inflation has been moderating has been 0.2%. So 0.2% times 12 months, 2.4%, not quite where the Fed wants it, but it's pretty good, right? And so for the past few years, we've seen a lot of monthly inflation readings at 0.2 or 0.3%, which would annualize to like 2.5 to somewhere in the low threes inflation, a little bit higher than the Fed wants, but not bad. And it's been a positive trend for most of the past 2 or 3 years. So this 0.9% surge in March was massive, but it was also expected. And if you've been with us on these calls for any period of time, you know that the markets don't react to the news. The markets react in anticipation of what the news will be. So the big sell-off in the bond market that we saw in the month of March, and really April, we've actually seen rates come down a little bit, but that big bump in rates in March, where rates went up a half a point from like 6 to 6.5%, that was all in anticipation of higher inflation due to higher energy cost. So the energy cost jumped up 1st of March and inflation followed, and now we're seeing that. But what we got Friday was not good news by any means. 0.9% for a month is not good. That pushed the annual headline number from 2.4 to 3.3, certainly higher than what the Fed wants. But this is the key line here, in line with expectations. The market expected a 0.9% monthly increase. It expected a big year-over-year increase. Um, Gasoline prices were up 21%. So normally you would think a big CPI reading like that, the market would react negatively and mortgage rates would go up. The opposite actually happened because it was expected. Um, there's two types of inflation they measure. So they measure what they call the headline number, and they measure the core inflation number. And the core is really what the Federal Reserve watches. The core is inflation with food and energy removed. And so if you're reading the update here, so the core reading, which strips out food and energy, that only rose 0.2% on an annual basis. It went from 2.5 to 2.6, was actually a little bit better than the market anticipated. So why did mortgage rates slightly improve on Friday when the inflation numbers weren't great? It's because they were actually a little bit better than expectations, or another way to put it, they weren't as bad as feared. Um, Now, why does the Fed care about the core inflation when food and energy aren't counted. Like I've always argued for years. I'm like, why do we care about the core inflation number? Last I checked, like I buy food and I buy gas. So like individually, like food and energy make up a big percentage of all of the money that all of us spend. And the reason for that is because the Fed can't impact food cost and energy cost. That's why the Fed watches the core number. So both are important, but the Federal Reserve really watches the core. Um, so really interesting to see how the market reacted. I'm gonna pop my share up here and just show you one other thing because the worst of this is mostly behind us. Hopefully, both on kind of the war itself, maybe we're heading towards some type of peace agreement. Um, but the worst, it seems like it's mostly behind us. I'll use the word potentially, um, because in the last few weeks, the bond market's improved. So, this was most of the month of March. You had a big bond market sell off that caused rates to move about a point higher. You can see March 27th, we kind of bottomed out and we've seen things improve since then. And so what's happened since then, the war hasn't ended. Oil prices are still $93 per barrel, not as high as they've been, but certainly elevated. So what's happened in the past 3 weeks or 2 weeks for mortgage rates to improve? The answer is nothing unexpected and nothing that would make it worse. And so the market has rebounded, so we're maybe halfway back to where we were, um, before the war started. So all in all, pretty positive news. If we want to look back at history, all we have to do is go back over the past 12 months. And if you remember what happened in the spring of 2025, and let me go back 2 years here. So we saw this big sell off in the bond market here. That was during the initial tariff battle, right? You saw the bond market sell off really heavy in the months of March and April of last year. It's almost like right now history is repeating itself a little bit. This sell off here that we're seeing right now, kind of war and oil related, looks a lot like the sell off in March and April of last year, which was tariff related. The end of May is when kind of the tariff battle, for the most part, was over, or at least it was winding down and things were settling down. And so what happened after that? 6 month bond market rally, right? Rates went from 7 to 6%, roughly in that time period. So I'm not calling for another massive rally where, rates go from 6.5 to 5.5 in the next 6, 8 months. But it is interesting that history could be repeating itself a little bit where a shock to the system, the market sells off, things settle, and then things improve. And it looks like we're starting kind of the beginning phase of that, where the market, let me go back in the last 6 months. So market sold off here, worst is behind us, things are starting to improve. We still have some way to go to get to where rates were really going back to like last fall, but it feels like we're at least trending in the right direction. Now, if you've been watching the war in the news and you keep up with things, like real time news, that could change like that in an instant. Ceasefire ends, another country enters the mix or something happens. Like things can change fast, but it does seem like the market hasn't been surprised by any news that's happened the past few weeks, which is very positive. No major economic news that'll be released this week. So I think the market, like it has been for the most of the last month or 6 weeks, will kind of follow what's happening in the war. And I think less oil prices and more does it seem like things are winding down. Over the weekend, it seems like US policy is shifting a little bit less towards open the Strait of Hormuz. And now it seems like the strategy might be we're going to blockade it, Iran, and kind of suffocate you out. And we're going to try to use US and Venezuelan oil to fill that gap of supply. And you wonder if that was the strategy all along. It's kind of hard to say. None of us are involved in those negotiations, but it'll be a volatile week like it has been. Um, So any positive news on things winding down, bringing oil prices down will be good news for interest rates. I think it's important right now for all of us to get this information in front of our customers. I think we've had a lot of people that, out of fear of the unknown, um, have kind of pulled back out of the market, or fear if they think rates are higher and affordability has become a challenge. They've pulled back out of the market. Interest rates are about halfway from where we were before this started. So is a quarter of a percent difference in interest rate going to stop someone from purchasing a home? It probably shouldn't, because in the big picture, is a quarter of a percent really that big of a market mover from a budgeting standpoint? Probably not. Um, the other news that came out over the weekend, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was on one of the morning shows the other day, and I'm just going to share my screen here again because if you guys are following along with a lot of the AI developments, so Anthropic, which developed Claude, has a new model called Mythos, and there's a lot of safety tests that some of these AI platforms have failed, and there's concerns of security. So, like during safety tests, an Anthropic researcher got an email from Mythos while he was eating a sandwich, which was a surprise because the model wasn't supposed to be online. It had escaped the test environment, bragged about breaking the rules, attempted to cover its tracks, um, like hacking security systems. There's some scary stuff with some of the AI tools that are being developed right now. So it'll be interesting to see if the government maybe steps in with some regulations and tries to pull some of those things back. Because it does seem like while some of those tools are effective, there seems to be some heightened security risk that you're hearing from the government. So that'll be something to monitor, not really on a real estate market standpoint, but just how we operate business standpoint. Okay, so switching gears off the market, I wanted to talk about two things: a mortgage product and then a sales tool. And then we will probably get you guys off here a little bit early today. So I want to post this question in the chat. How long do you have to be self-employed to get a mortgage? Okay, so if I'm self-employed, how long do I typically have to be self-employed to get a mortgage? Okay, and so I've got a bunch of 2 years here. Okay, so good job, everybody. That's the canned standard vanilla answer. Um, the answer is 1 year. 1 year of tax returns. So, and it's not every program. So like FHA and VA, it's two. Most programs, all of you who answered 2 years, the answer is accurate. It's typically 2 years for most programs. That said, you can do a conventional mortgage if you've been self-employed for less than 2 years. It gets a little bit tricky because you don't have 2 years of tax returns to average. So your first year had to be really good on paper. But I just bring that up because someone on our team recently closed a transaction, a conventional Fannie Mae mortgage, for someone that wasn't 2 years self-employed. And so I bring that up. And Aaron posted in the chat, and Aaron worked with the customer a couple years ago that was W-2'd as Aaron, I think a financial advisor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And went W-2 to 1099, and it had just gone 1099 like a month or two earlier, right? 2 months, Aaron.
2 months.
So I bring it up because when you guys talk to people on the phone, like we've talked about bank statement loans as a great tool for buyers that are self-employed. And I think a lot of you have kind of shared social posts and videos that, hey, I have lenders that work with people who are self-employed. If you're self-employed and you don't think you can qualify for a mortgage because you write too much off, don't worry. We've got someone that might be able to help. So add the 2 year self-employed to that. And certainly there's not a guarantee that someone self-employed 6 months is going to be able to get approved, because the general rule of 2 years still applies to most people. But if you have someone that's less than two and they've got good credit and some cash to put down, at least have us talk to them and see if there's an option, because it's not always a firm, hard and fast 2 year number. The other thing I wanted to mention today, so I'm guessing that most of us like getting referrals from past clients. So this is kind of more of like a sales tip I wanted to spend a little time on today. So I love it when a past client refers me. I think all of us probably love it when a past client refers me. If we track our conversion ratios, I would imagine referrals from past clients are probably the second highest conversion ratio. Highest is a repeat client. Like any repeat client comes back to you, you're probably have a very, very high conversion rate where they use you and buy a house and close the transaction. The second highest is a referral from a past client. Um, Certainly higher than anything else we do, internet, social media, networking, open house, past client referrals are very, very high conversion ratio. And so how can we optimize the ability to get past client referrals? I think there's two ways. Um, One is we have to promote that we like referrals. And the second is that we have to thank people for giving us referrals. So the tactic I'm going to share with you guys today, it's a reminder because I got a referral from a client that I did a mortgage for in 2009 or 10. And I don't know if Heather Unger is on today because I think she's out in Texas at an event. But Heather and I worked on this client literally 15 years ago, and she referred me somebody the other day. And so I think when we get a referral, what do most of us do? Maybe we call the person. Maybe we send them a handwritten note card. Maybe we send them a gift like a Starbucks card or cookies or cherries, berries, or something like that. But what it did is it reminded me that we all need to have a systematic approach to not only promoting and asking for referrals, but saying thank you for those referrals. There's a great book that some of you guys have probably read. So Michael Mayer wrote a book called Seven Levels of Communication. Go from relationships to referrals. It was kind of a bestseller in the real estate space, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years ago. But one of the tactics in that book was called the Great Retrace. I'm going to ask you guys in the chat, has anyone read that book? Just curious to see. And I'm going to type the name of it in the chat. Okay, so I got a yes from an Angie. Okay, so I'm sure some of you have. So Michael and I are become pretty good buddies over the years. So 7L by Michael Mayer, I would highly encourage everyone jump on Amazon and buy a copy. It's like 10 or 15 bucks on paperback. But my favorite tactic in the book, Aaron, you actually have one that you use, the networking stack, if you want to pop in and share that.
Networking stack. Yeah.
Yeah. So my favorite tactic, and Aaron's got one as well. Maybe we can share both. It's called the Great Retrace. Okay. And so on camera, I can see Aaron, Liz, and Pam. So I'm just going to pretend like Aaron, Liz, and Pam are customers. Okay. Um, so let's say that Liz refers me Aaron. Okay. So we can all relate to that, right? And so I talk to Aaron, I get him pre-approved. I probably call Liz and say, "Hey, Liz, thanks for referring Aaron." I think most of us do that, right? Um, I would probably write a handwritten note card to Liz and say, handwritten note card. Probably can't read my handwriting, but she would get something that says, thanks for the referral to Aaron, right? And maybe some of us even would send a gift to Liz, a Starbucks card or Sherry's Berries, or I know some realtors use something called Sugar Wish, which is like cookies. But maybe I would even go as far as sending a gift, right? Something thoughtful. Okay. But I think that's if you do all three of those, you are doing far more than most salespeople. But I think that's where even the best of us start. But in the Great Retrace, Michael Mayer recommends taking it one step further. So let's say that Pam originally referred me Liz. Okay. And so most of us would take good care of Aaron and call Liz to say thanks. Most of us wouldn't go a step further and call Pam and say something like, "Hey, Pam, you remember your friend Liz that you referred me a couple years ago? Yeah, that's great. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, helped her out. Hey, by the way, she referred me this guy, Aaron, who I really like. I got him pre-approved, going to help him buy a house. I would have never met Aaron if you didn't first refer me Liz 7 years ago. So I just wanted to call and say thank you, Pam, for referring me Liz because Liz then referred me Aaron." And going that extra step, what does that do? It thanks Pam, the original source of referrals, which is appropriate. I could handwrite, note, gift Pam as well. So it says thank you, which is appropriate. It also reminds Pam that I like referrals. And Pam maybe referred me Liz 5 years ago. and she maybe hasn't even thought of me for 5 years. And some of us struggle with, what do I say when I call a past customer? It's kind of awkward. Hey, I haven't talked to you in 7 years. I'm calling to check in because I want to list your house when you decide to move, which is the real reason we're calling. And it's kind of awkward, right? So that's an easy excuse to call. It's a reconnection with Pam, who might have been someone I sold a house to years ago. And it reminds Pam that I'm looking for referrals. And I go kind of top of mind again for her again, especially if I followed up with a handwritten note card and some type of thoughtful gift. And then maybe 6 months later, I get her back on my, once or twice a year check-in program. So if you guys haven't heard of that book or read it, 7L by Michael Mayer, that tactic is called the Great Retrace. And every single one of us has probably got a referral from a past client this month. And if we all follow that process that he spells out in the book, I think we would see our past client interaction and engagement explode, and the number of referrals we get from them as well. Aaron, you want to talk about the network stack, because you use that really effectively as well, since we got a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Network stack, very easy, right? You find basically a place that you can go to and sit and have some home field advantage, right? A place where you have coffee every week, place where you have lunch every week, something that's regular. You get to know the people around you. And then you schedule your network stack around that. So if I have 45-minute appointments, I go and sit, and I used to sit right here at another Broken Egg in Winter Park twice a month. On Wednesdays, I would sit there from 7:30 in the morning to about 1 in the afternoon, and I would have my realtor appointment in the morning, and in between, I'd invite a builder, and I'd introduce the realtor and the builder at that exchange when the builder was coming in and the realtor was leaving. And I coordinate that and usually sit there from 7:30 till 1 with back-to-back appointments, introducing everyone along that chain.
Yeah, you could do like realtor, builder, title company, insurance, client might pop in there, something like that, right?
Right.
And so I think it's a great way. So in the book, Michael talks about that, Aaron, which is like connecting other people, like you becoming the connector. But then I think having that home field advantage of, because like I remember at another Broken Egg, like there was like a certain table you wanted to be at, right?
Yes.
Like
I was always in
maybe,
the front right-hand corner.
yeah, yeah, where you can see the front door as people come
Hmm.
in, right? They can see you. They're not hunting around for you. The servers get to know you. I've got a financial advisor that I work with. If you're in Orlando, Hillstone or Houston's, for those of us that have lived here a long time, on Lake Killarney. So this guy, Scott, literally goes to Hillstone's like 4 days a week, and he does two meetings. Like he does a salad meeting and he does a lunch meeting. And he's there the whole time, and he has back-to-back people. And um, I think there's a huge advantage when people know you. Um, and Angie, or sorry, Abby, you posted in there. Yeah, once a month. Like Aaron, yours was once a month, I think, wasn't it? Like
It was,
second,
yeah, every 2 weeks I would sit there.
yeah. So like every other Thursday or second Wednesday or
Right.
something like that. Is a great tactic. And I think when it's burned into your calendar as a recurring event, third Wednesday, second Tuesday, whatever, it's easy to fill the slots because you know it's going to be there, and you can work 2 or 3 weeks in advance to fill it. And you don't have to start from scratch and try to schedule it. So yeah, that's a tactic we could all use as well. Like pick one day of the month and knock out two or three meetings at the same place. So you could do like a lunch and then an early happy hour, like a late lunch, early happy hour could be an effective tactic as well. All right, guys. Well, it's right about 10:30. We'll let you jump off today. Thanks for jumping on. That book, if you don't have it, 7L is awesome. Jump on Amazon and grab a copy. They've got audio as well, I think, if you're more in tune for that. And have a great day. Have a great week. And we will see you guys next Monday. Thanks, everybody.